This is a bit awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia.
And Bill.
And today we are discussing this book. It's called...
Pimp State!
I think I might have to move the microphone further away if you keep doing that. It's called Pimp State by Kat Banyard.
Yes.
This book came out last year in 2017. And you bought it. Why did you decide to read this book?
I really like pimps, first of all. No. I bought it because I read the article by Kat Banyard in The Guardian that was basically the central argument of the book in a news story.
Mm-hmm.
And it really kind of challenged the views that I had on the sex trade. Like, I always figured the feminist approach was to support sex workers by making prostitution legal and affording them the same protections you get in any line of work.
Mm-hmm.
But her article really challenged what I thought about that. I like things that are challenging.
Yeah,
Change your views.
and this really was because as someone who grew up in Germany where prostitution's been legal for what do we find out?
2002 was what
Yes,
what
over
Wikipedia
15
said.
years. You know, it's normal to see, I mean, you've lived in my hometown, the brothel was right opposite Aldi.
Mhm.
It's the most German thing I've ever said. It's part of the infrastructure of the town, and that's the same in every town in Germany. I was also of the opinion that the right way to deal with women involved in sex work is to build structures that make it able for them to do their work in a safe way as possible.
And are you still?
Well, Kat Banyard makes a really good argument for that there is never a safe way to do sex work, that it's always exploitative, and that the groups lobbying for legalizations tend to do that mostly out of their own interests. So a lot of the groups that she mentions in this book that have been involved with setting up legal structures have been made up of pimps, for example. I'm still not sure about what I think, though.
It's a really tricky one, and that's why everyone watching this should go and read the book. There's definitely a lot in there that we're not going to be able to cover here. It's got us taking a look at the sex trade in the context of society. If you believe in feminism, you believe in equality, yet here you've got this trade that almost entirely men are the customers and women are the product. That's the bit that kind of got me thinking, like, how could I support the existence and legalization of a trade like that that's so weirdly lopsided.
So prostitution would not exist in a completely equal society, and that's something that I do believe. Hello, Minervi. This is just what she does, Bill.
It's not just that it's kind of lopsided as it is. It's that it's kind of perpetuates
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
The idea that a man can go to a woman with a wad of cash and expect to have full access to her and to her body and expect a good service.
Yeah. Shall I read you what Kat Banyard says about that? When a buyer hands over money, whether it be in a strip club, on a porn site, or in a brothel, he buys the privilege of not having to consider whether the person stimulating his sexual arousal is attracted to him, whether or not she's in the mood, what she likes sexually, whether it's uncomfortable, hurts, or is degrading, what her boundaries are, what her insecurities might be, or how much pressure she is under to be there. It's like what you said, it only works because of a power imbalance between the two in the first place.
And if you take a look at there's a bit in the book where they quote a bunch of reviews.
Yes, that's an uncomfortable
reviews of
read,
prostitutes, yeah. Like saying, oh, she didn't enjoy it at all, she wasn't into it. Expecting a good service, like you're paying for a product for a service. You know?
Yeah, they were complaining that the women were like blow-up dolls, rather than actually enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, if she's had sex with like 20 people up to that point, yeah.
In that day.
Or perhaps more accurately, been abused by, is the argument Kat makes as well.
Yes, so that's another thing that she talks about, that I'm just not sure about how I feel about that. So she considers every kind of work in the sex trade, that's stripping, working in porn, and prostitution. She considers all of that abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just not sure.
I think the argument for that and I'm not sure on this either, is sex without consent is rape or abuse. And here these women aren't consenting in the sense that they're not enthusiastic about the sex.
Yes.
Like, consent isn't just
okay.
Yeah, okay, I'm asleep, do your thing. That consent is completely absent from pretty much all forms of sex work, if you want to call it that.
She makes a really good point that the vast majority of women who work in the sex industry do it out of reasons other than I really want to work in the sex industry.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of women are exploited by pimps, by traffickers. I mean, this is all stuff that we know, but this is all stuff that we like to not think about. So
Yeah.
we like to pretend that every woman who is a sex worker does it because it's her dream job, because it's what she wants to do.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, because she makes so much money that it's fine.
And that's the lines that we're sold by porn, by the industry.
Yeah.
Everything that they tell us. I'm sure for some women in the trade it is, but the studies are there. Like, the vast majority are trafficked and
Yes.
often become drug addicts just to kind of numb themselves to be able to get on with it.
That was a really interesting statistic that I found. She quotes a study that says that when women start working as prostitutes, not many of them are actually addicted to drugs, but while on the job, a lot of them become addicted to drugs.
Mm-hmm. I've had a bunch of really crappy jobs at university. I've done cleaning and I've done warehouse work at night.
Yeah, I can't say I enjoy my job particularly.
And yeah, but I've never thought, gosh, this is hard, I need some heroin.
It's on a different
That's
level.
good.
It's beyond unpleasantness, it's beyond, I'm bored, I don't want to go to work.
I think everyone can understand to a point a level of desperation to not think about where you are and what you're doing when you're in an unpleasant situation. And this is just life for these women. It's this constant having to be absent from what is really something very I guess unpleasant and traumatizing and something that's really very intimate. Every bit of it sounds awful the way she describes it. And they have to take the heroin on top of, like, they can't. I don't know if you've ever been so desperate to escape that your brain just can't do it on its own anymore and needs something else chemically to numb it.
No, I worked in a factory once for like 3 weeks and I recited poetry in my head, but that's as far as I ever had to go to escape my job. She makes a point about how certain things we as a society have decided are not for sale. So she says, for example, human organs, votes, bonded labour, child labour, and so on. And then she makes the point right at the end that sex work needs to be in that category, that it is a product that just cannot be sold. Which I'm not sure if I agree with that on a purely theoretical basis, but throughout the entire book she makes a very good point that in the society in which we live, it's just not possible. First, because of the patriarchy, because of the power imbalances that are there between men and women. Secondly, because of the exploitation of these women by traffickers, which doesn't stop when they're legalized. So a lot of the sex workers that she talks about and she talks to in Germany, where it's completely legalized, are trafficked from other countries.
So, like, the traffickers are going to think, hey, it's legal in this country. Like, that's a whole other area that I just don't have to deal with,
Yes, exactly.
Hey, let's do it. Let's traffic some women in here.
Yeah, because even though it's legalized, their structures aren't in place to actually make it a job. The model that she advocates is the Swedish model, where buying sex is illegal, and you can be prosecuted and you can go to jail for.
Yeah, and crucially, selling sex is legal because they don't want to criminalise the women who are caught up in that life.
Yes.
And want to be able to support them.
Yes. So in Sweden that seems to have worked out alright. So it's been going for over a decade, I think. And the statistics seem to show that fewer women get involved in prostitution. And more importantly, fewer men get involved in prostitution as buyers.
Yeah, and like we need to cover that because that's like myth number one in this book. The book is structured so that it deals with a number of the myths surrounding the sex trade, and myth number one is the inevitability of the sex trade.
Yes.
If you try and take away the sex trade from men will be raping and pillaging all over the place. I think it's true, really.
No, but it's not.
Really
You're not going to actually get rid of problems in the sex industry without getting rid of patriarchal structures in the first place. It's
a really nice idea to think that the sex trade could work and could be a thing. It's two consenting adults doing a thing. You put money into that, or why should that make it illegal? And it's because society can't handle it as it is. Men are likely in lots of little ways in society to claim a kind of ownership of women and to claim a control of women.
Mm-hmm.
And that catcalling is a very simple example where men feel entitled to make these sort of comments,
yes,
and entitled to often a positive response to that, which
and get offended when they don't get it.
Here is an industry that says, yeah, you can do that, pay the money, you're allowed to own this person for a bit. That leads as well into an awful lot of the abuse and the rape that happens to prostitutes.
Yes.
There was an interview in there with a porn star who, when she got into the business, was like, for a bit of nude modelling, whatever. Even though she went in there and she was only told, she was going to be taking her clothes off, it was men doing things to her that she didn't even want to do in her personal life.
Yeah, I think a lot of women will agree with me that we've all been in situations where we're pressured into things. You don't necessarily consent to it, but you don't feel like you have the power to say no.
And it was literally like, do this or you don't get paid.
It's a really hard thing to read about, because you want to believe that everyone who's involved in these industries does it out of their own free will.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the book is very eye-opening. It will challenge your beliefs, even my beliefs about Germany being some sort of utopia.
The thing the book doesn't really cover is cam girls and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of women who go into the business entirely on their own, of their own volition.
And actually being self-employed.
Maybe they will record themselves having sex with a partner, and there's no one's getting abused there.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, again, it's only working because of patriarchal structures, but in that case it's the women somehow profiting from the patriarchal structures.
Yeah. I think Kat Banyard could have gone into a bit more. What about these women who are choosing to do it, who are posting pictures of themselves doing these cam shows and getting a load of money from it because they want to do it and it's a good way to make money?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. On the one hand, you can't ever blame the women doing this. They're making this choice with their bodies to do the thing. Fine. You put it in the context of a wider society and it gets a lot more murky. They are inadvertently still encouraging men to objectify women and to pay money for the ownership of women in some way. Pay the money, I get to see the boobies. And the whole nice guy culture is built around this idea of I put nice things in and I get sex back.
Yeah.
That's how women work. A lot of that is encouraged by the sex trade, and women who go into it because they want to do it are still a part of that.
I don't know, I still can't really blame them.
Views in the comments down below. Is that what you say?
Yeah. You know what, at this point no one's watching anymore. This book really makes you think, and I think that's one of the most valuable parts about it.
I think after reading the book, I would say that there are easy and straightforward answers to the bigger sex trade. The two problems that stop it from working in society at the moment are the patriarchy and corporate capitalism. If we make prostitution into a global business, what are you doing with that global business? You are trafficking women. You are trying to make the most amount of money with the smallest amount of investment. And the sex industry is already doing this. Traffickers, prostitution, already doing this. They will look at an area and say, what kind of women do the men in this area want? Where can we pick them up and bring them over? The sex industry are sort of allowed to continue and grow in the way that it is only going to become worse. Left to grow as it is, it will only become bigger and more powerful and more exploitative. Even if you try and take patriarchy out of the argument, and you can't, that's still really scary.
Yes, it's a scary book. Shall we wrap it up here? So, I gave this...
I don't know how to do a wrap-up.
Okay, just let me do this bit. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, which I rarely do for non-fiction books, because it really makes you question your own beliefs, and it presents its argument very well. You don't have a Goodreads account, but how would you rate it out of 5?
What, compared to all of the other books I've read?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have any other way of comparing, do you?
Yeah, I would probably go 4 as well. Maybe knock half a point off that for not going into
the webcam.
Yeah, the webcams and stuff. The argument that I just made about corporate capitalism isn't really in there either, but it
no, it's sort of touched on, but
I don't think it talks to enough women working in the sex
Yes.
industry,
Yeah.
and
talks to a lot of charities and stuff like that. But
yeah, helping people get out, and we've got to try not to say sex workers, 'cause that's the thing, because it's not
see,
working.
I don't know, because I've read plenty of interviews with women involved in prostitution who prefer to call themselves sex workers, and I don't want to ignore their wish in that regard.
And I don't think there's enough of that, and I think in this discussion that we're having as well, I really want to talk to more prostitutes.
There have been books written by everyone in the sex industry. I'm pretty sure you can find books written by porn stars, prostitutes, pimps. I'm fairly sure that there's a large body of work surrounding that topic, and maybe you should find some of those works, and then we can do another video talking about those.
I want to hear more about
More of
what
their
they
own
think,
voices.
because you and I aren't part of the sex
Even
trade.
nearly qualified to have this discussion.
No, we're not. If you want to form a more kind of complete opinion, I think you need more input from prostitutes.
Yeah, you need
Like,
other voices to be heard in this, other than campaigners.
We're in a kind of really weird state, both after having read this book, is that we went from being like so sure, like we should
Legalisation all the way,
legalize
yeah.
it, but I'm just a bit confused now, aren't we?
It's a very difficult thing to think about, but I urge you to get this book if you're interested in social issues and women's issues, and read it. Thank you all for watching. You have to say bye.
Bye!